Who were the Puritans? Puritanism is the body of religious beliefs accepted by members of a particular Protestant denomination of Christianity. Essentially, it is the religious thought of John Calvin, born in 1509, a French Protestant theologian of the Reformation. Puritanism is Calvin's interpretation of the Bible. The English colonists who settled the New England area brought with them this particular body of Christian doctrine. This Puritanism, this Calvinism, it profoundly affected every aspect of their political organizations and political attitudes. Puritanism still affects the policies and practices of America today. The moral, ethical, and religious convictions of the Puritans shaped American culture and character. According to Puritanism, God was good. He was just, but wrathful. He was inscrutable, unknowable beyond man's understanding, and he was omniscient, or all-knowing. The universe was God's creation. We were predestined by God. All events are totally planned out by him. He is hostile towards man, even though the manifestation of God's glory and beauty is inscrutable. In 1620, a small group of Europeans sailed from England on the Mayflower. William Bradford was one of the most famous and well-known. He wrote of Plymouth Plantation over the course of 30 years. The passengers were these religious reformers who were critical of the Church of England. Having given up hope of purifying the Church, they chose instead to withdraw from the Church of England altogether. We know these individuals as Pilgrims or Puritans. They were radical. They demanded fundamental changes in the Church of England. But they were also conservative. They preached a plain, unadorned Christianity. By 1630s, upwards of 700 Puritans had arrived in what we would become known as America. By 1640, as many as 20,000 British Puritans had settled in New England. So who were the Puritans? For these settlers, religion was a personal inner experience. There was no need for an intermediary between God and the individual. They hoped to build a new society, patterned after the Word of God, and create a city upon a hill, a community guided in all aspects by the Bible. Many Puritans were persecuted for their beliefs. At the center of Puritan theology was an uneasy mixture of certainty and doubt. Man was God's special creation, not a mere animal, and was created in God's image. Man's basic nature was originally good when he first created and put in the Garden of Eden. However, since original sin of Adam and Eve, man's basic nature has been evil. He has been depraved by that original sin. So, although he was originally free when first created and put in the Garden of Eden, now, and ever since original sin, man will not be free. The individual's life and his destiny beyond life are totally predestined by God. Eternal damnation to hell for nearly all is predestined by God as a punishment for this original sin. There is no salvation or heaven for the very few elected by God to receive. This saving grace, though undeserved, is given to a few because of the sufferings of Christ. Its being given at all is evidence of God's benevolence and love. So, doubt centered on whether or not you were one of the saved or one of the damned. So how do you know? The individual has no way of knowing whether he is one of the great majority all predestined to hell, or whether he is one of the very few elected to be saved, for his final destiny is not determined by his own good works or his own evil. However, it was assumed that God had probably predestined the elected ones to goodness in this life. It was also thought that the state of grace was accompanied by an inner consciousness and an intense feeling of election. But again, such a feeling may be a false sign, and therefore no guarantee of a genuine state of grace. So the individual's real knowledge of his fate after death remains none. The gift of God's mercy is a mystery. Man's duty was to glorify God through his good works. To the Puritans, good works meant industriousness, laboring hard and well at whatever it is that one does in life. It also means man's duty to strive towards comprehension of what God has seen fit to reveal to man about his will in the Bible. So after receiving the grace, you were reborn as a member of the community of elect, or the saints. Puritans believed that a covenant or contract existed between God and humanity. They believed that people should enter freely into agreements concerning their government. The Mayflower Compact, which we will read next week, is one of these examples. The Puritan form of government would be considered a theocracy, a state governed and under the immediate guidance of God. Puritans read the Bible as the real-life story of all creation, its fall, its wanderings, and the rescue of the human race. This is a summary of basic Puritan doctrine. You can see that they would also stress the following things: intellect rather than emotion, simplicity in all things rather than ornamentation, restraint rather than exuberance, obedience to established authority rather than individual freedom, pessimism rather than optimism, rigid order rather than flexibility. So the Bible was essentially a long narrative that every Puritan could see connections to in their own lives. Each Puritan was trained to see life as a pilgrimage or journey to salvation. The Bible was the literal Word of God, and reading it was a necessity for this salvation.